Good evening. Hi, this is Sandy Shallis, and I'm here tonight because we got to have a conversation. There's so much going on in the climate change world, and I have really lessened my amount of doing these things because of issues, physical issues. But um, I think it's important to go over this with you, you know? So welcome. And hi, Kim, and hi, Karen and Tina. I'm so happy that I have such beautiful, faithful, wonderful people. I'm doing this live on Facebook, so I can't share. I'm in Facebook jail because last week I shared Nikia's live stream, and it must have been controversial to talk about solar energy. So let's get started. I'm going to start with a little piece of what Greta Thunberg said at the COP24 when she opened up for her comments at COP24, and then we'll talk about what COP24 is. Greta Thunberg is 15 years old. She's a climate leader, climate change leader. She's going to be a name on all of our lips. She's from Sweden. She's amazing. She's an amazing young girl. So this is what she said, quote, "So we have not come here to beg the world leaders to care for our future. They have ignored us in the past, and they will ignore us again. We have come here to let them know that change is coming, whether they like it or not." She is amazing. Okay. She's amazing young girl, and her parents are supportive and they're fantastic. And, I was listening to an interview with Stuart Scott and Greta's dad, and this is all new. And she really got her parents to pay attention. And now they're all doing this activism, and she is just, it is what we want all our children to do and be. I mean, wonderful. So I start off on a good note, and I did want to talk about Extinction Rebellion. I wanted to talk about the COP24, and I wanted to just throw in a few things about what's going on and just say hi again, and hi, let's see, hi, Trevor. They changed the software a little, so hi, Trevor. Hi, Jeff. Kim. Oh my gosh, everybody's here. This is great. Thank you so much, Marsha. I'm so happy to have you all here with me. I wasn't going to, and Karen, I wasn't going to do a lot of whining, and Tina, because I've had so many problems physically, and I needed to do this tonight. So here we go. I'm going to start with COP24. COP24, and it's obviously the 24th year. It's called the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It's also known this year as the Katowice Climate Change Conference because it's a conference held between the 2nd of December and in 2018 in Katowice, Poland, which, interestingly enough, is coal central in Poland. And they're paying for a lot of this. Poland's pretty right wing, but maybe they're going to wake up there. The conference aims to finalize the practical implementation of the 2015 Paris Agreement, part of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. After the United States left the Paris Agreement, China has taken a leading role by hosting many of the preparatory meetings in the weeks beforehand. Just prior to the conference, the World Meteorological Organization released a report claiming that 2017 atmospheric carbon dioxide levels reached 405 parts per million ppm, a level not seen in 3 to 5 million years. Sir David Attenborough, he, oh, is there a lag? Okay, wait a minute. Oh, it's all right. I don't know how it is. All I know is it's snowing here. So just in case, you know, our cell tower, because I have such crappy internet, has a little snow on it, we may have a lag, or I may look like pixelated woman because it's live and I probably already look like pixelated woman. And I'm sorry. Again, I repeat, I have rural internet. So I have wireless tower somewhere that is probably frying my brain because I don't have hardwire. So David Attenborough, he told delegates at the conference, it's pretty big news because it made the cover of the UK's version of the National Enquirer. He says, right now we are facing a man-made disaster of global scale. Our greatest threat in thousands of years, climate change. If we don't take action, the collapse of our civilizations and the extinction of much of the natural world is on the horizon. And there's another little piece about Greta and another quote. Greta, what I hope we achieve at this conference is that we realize that we are facing an existential threat. This is the biggest crisis humanity has ever faced. First, we have to realize this, and then as fast as possible, do something to stop the emissions and try to save what we can save. She's 15. The same day, the 14th Dalai Lama wrote to participants at the conference, climate change is not a concern of just one or two nations. It is an issue that affects all humanity and every living being on this earth. This beautiful place is our only home. We have to take serious action now to protect our environment and find constructive solutions to global warming. So that's what's going on at the COP, and they're supposed to be doing all kinds of negotiations on the agenda to update the things that they've been working on since Paris. But, you know, the other day, I made a comment about this, and there was an article online, and one of my friends said, come on, they've had 24 years they've been doing this, and we're just getting worse. So there's, you know, there's a tipping, it's good and bad about this. They have an agenda, and they want to follow up on the Paris Climate Agreement, and this is sponsored by the United Nations, and it is not the New World Order, and it is not Agenda 21. It is countries coming together to recognize that the globe has a problem and climate change is a global issue. As an aside, if you're really worried about a New World Agenda, just look under your nose at Donald Trump, because his New World Agenda is Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, all the places that will just kill you if they don't like you. Okay, let's go back to this. So the United Nations is hosting this, and of course, it's in Poland. So people are flying. They are flying to get there, and there's been controversy about that because people have to stop flying. You know, if we are going to get over our issues, which, if, anyway, this place, they're in Poland, and like I said, it's a coal mining region. It is one of the most polluted places in Europe. There are, they talk about the countries with the emerging economies remaining committed to the deal in theory. The world continues to be heavily reliant on coal, with coal use increasing in China in 2017 and 18. It needs to be phased out. They say by 2050 in order to hit the 1.5 degree target. Of course, there's a lot of controversy revolving around that because some say we're already there. And that's why we're seeing what we're seeing all over the globe. But it's a financial thing too, because of course it's going to cost money to implement new things. And on the right, anything that costs money, nope, we're not doing it. Anything for the greater good, they're not going to do it. And the other day, what did Donald Trump say? It was a comment I saw, something about, he's referring to saying, oh, well, I'm not going to be here anyway. That is the selfishness that's happening. That's selfish. It's disgusting, actually. I won't go into my whole political diatribe, though, because I have a lot to talk about with this. So the COP is going to be interesting. Stuart Scott is there. He's been there before. He's our friend. He's from Scientists Warning. He has something to do with We Have No Time. Or wait, we don't have time. Oh my God, sorry. But that's the movement to have all this stuff happen online, this whole movement online. We already are there. There's a lot of us already here online, all over, using social media as the tool to communicate climate change. So we've talked about COP24, and we'll see more about that coming up, which I think will be interesting. More videos, more interviews with scientists. I'm interested to see what they come up with as far as their suggestions for countries to meet the goals of reducing their emissions. But it's not just all about that. I mean, we know this. We know that climate change is but one part of this whole puzzle of environmental degradation. We're ruining our climate, but we're ruining our lands all over the world, from fracking and drilling and mining and coal and all of it, ocean acidification, the sea level rise, all these things are, but it's one big cluster. But I do believe that global warming, the warming of our atmosphere, is the major issue of our time. It's the umbrella issue. And that is where I'm going to segue into Extinction Rebellion. It's cool as heck. I made friends with Dr. Roger Hallam, who is with Extinction Rebellion on Facebook. I can't wait to talk to him. But there are 2 videos with him and on Going South on YouTube. That's Torstein Vidal's channel, Going South on YouTube. I'm going to put up a whole bunch of links. And the last 2, he was having conversation with Guy McPherson. So very interesting, fascinating stuff. Extinction Rebellion, sometimes shortened as XR, is an international social movement that aims to influence the government of the United Kingdom and global environmental policy through nonviolent protests and civil disobedience to minimize species extinction and global warming. It was established in 2018 with about 100 scientists signing a call to action. In November 2018, various acts of civil disobedience took place in London. I'm sure you read all about it. The idea of civil disobedience is an idea that a majority of educated people agree with. When the fate of the world lies in balance, it is recommended that you watch this video, and it's on their page on Scientists Warning, on Henry David Thoreau. It's interesting. So they're a super interesting group. And I believe that Extinction Rebellion is a great thing, and it's proliferating throughout the world, but they have to get together with all of these other groups, because civil disobedience is just one leg of making changes. The climate mobilization is another leg, mobilizing communities. We don't have time is another leg, social media action, all of it. All of everything has to get together, because if there's going to be change, regardless of the outcome, everyone has to meet and be interrelated. They know how to do it on the right. The climate deniers know how to do it. We're going to go there a little bit because, of course, I can't talk about this stuff without talking about these people that are they just anger me to no end. But I have this article, and this is a really good article in an publication called New Internationalist. Extinction Rebellion, in or out? Inspirational to some, apocalyptic to others. And it's 5 climate concern campaigners offer their take on Extinction Rebellion. I thought it was really interesting find, and I'm going to make it fast and try to get through this. And please share if you can, because I am in Facebook jail, which means I can't share anything, and I will never give Facebook another penny to boost anything. In October 2018, Extinction Rebellion launched a series of protests that mobilized thousands of many first-time activists and caught the attention of the media. The rebels had 3 key demands that the UK government tell the truth about the climate devastation by declaring an emergency: the establishment of a citizens' assembly to overview a repeal of climate negligent laws and enactment of new policies in line with climate science. They injected a new sense of energy and urgency into the climate movement. Thousands joined nonviolent actions. London bridges were blocked, hundreds arrested. But the group has also come under fire for neglecting more political questions of justice, power, and racism. Well, it's all new. We learn as we go. 1 month since XR burst onto the UK climate scene, 5 climate concerned campaigners from both inside and outside give their views. And if you don't mind, I have to do this. Okay, now I can continue. It's time for a peaceful revolution. This one. I chose to take part in the XR demonstrations in Parliament Square due to my mounting frustration with our collective legal response to climate change. And they're talking about the UK. Over the last 25 years, countries, I hope I'm not frozen, countries have agreed 3 international treaties to tackle it. The 1992 UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, the 1997 Kyoto Protocol, and the 2015 Paris Agreement, which commits countries to keep increase in the global average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius and to strive for the considerably safer limit of 1.5 degrees Celsius. But a closer examination of the legal implementation of these treaties shows the rebels are right to take to the streets. Of the 185 countries that are parties to the Paris Agreement, around 157 have national greenhouse gas reduction goals. Only 58 of these 157 countries have greenhouse gas reduction policies enshrined into law, and few have legally binding policies in place that would fully achieve their own reduction goals. We are running out of time. Climate scientists have concluded that global emissions must peak by 2020, 2 years. What else happens in 2020 in the United States? And be net zero by 2050 if the world is to have a chance of staying within the temperature thresholds set out in Paris. But we are very far from that happening. Only a handful of countries have set themselves this ambition, let alone got legislation and public financing to back up implementation. In G20 countries, which accounts for 75% of global greenhouse emissions, after 3 decades of scientific warnings, 3 decades, about 82% of the energy supply is still sourced from fossil fuels, and CO2 emissions need to decline to net zero by 2050. But we are very far from that happening. All the above demonstrates is that we're rapidly making our way to climate devastation. Our fiscal policies and laws are tilted too heavily in favor of fossil fuel incumbents who fund lobbyists to kill climate legislation and buy off politicians. These facts lie at the heart of Extinction Rebellion's calls for public education about the truths of climate inaction. That's why I will be taking nonviolent direct action and supporting all those taking their governments to court to demand a peaceful revolution to end the era of fossil fuels. That was Farhana Yamin, and she is an independent climate change lawyer and founder of Track O. I'll be putting this link up. And thanks for sharing, guys. Here's another one. Apocalyptic movements don't end well. I've been involved on the fringes of Extinction Rebellion, and the emergence of the movement is remarkable, fascinating, exhilarating, and troubling all at the same time. I'm always encouraged to see people motivated to organize, take action, and just discuss climate change, the world's biggest threat that people simply don't talk about. Despite this, I have concerns. I fear for the movement's longevity and wider appeal. Most obviously, at a time when elites need to be challenged and systemic change enacted, they suggest we shouldn't blame any one individual and just demand governments do more. A more troubling aspect, though, are the millennialist tendencies of the group. Whenever I see their doom-laden imagery and the end of the world slogans, I'm reminded of the fishes from the 2006 film Children of Men, increasingly radicalized religious zealots bent on reminding the population of their imminent mortality. XR says this is the end, and the choice we face is not whether it happens, but how bad it will be. Influenced by the Dark Mountain literary movement, a recent action saw the burial of a coffin representing Mother Earth and a series of public readings and poems centered on loss and mourning. I worry because most millennialist movements from the 16th century Anabaptist Munster to present-day ISIS don't end well, unleashing strong emotions and tending towards extreme actions and messianic leaders. Class, race, and geography all have an impact on a community's resilience to climate perturbations. It's a privilege for well-off, relatively unaffected British citizens to mourn at a time when climate impacts are becoming more acute for the global South as well as for the UK working class. If I possess it, I should use my privilege for practical purposes to change our society for the better. Speaking of Extinction Rebellion, a friend asked me, would they put their bodies on the line for the residents at Grenfell, for the people sleeping rough, for refugees facing deportations? I believe Grenfell is where the fracking is going on in the UK. People shouldn't be sad. They should be angry, and they should direct their anger at those responsible for getting us into this mess and keeping us there. And that was Jonathan Atkinson. He's an environmental campaigner and a co-founder of the energy system company Carbon Co-op. That was interesting. Next one. And thanks for hanging with me. The situation demands nothing less. I joined my local Extinction Rebellion group in November because it was a tactical way to organize against climate negligence, and the movement felt unashamedly led by love. And with deep love comes grief. These are the raw feelings that define Extinction Rebellion meetings, more than any abstract sense of morality. This truth has bred trust and connections, and attention to well-being, support, and aftercare during protests. Civil disobedience may be new to many ex-rebels, as we call ourselves, but awareness of the interdependent crisis facing our planet is not. Extinction Rebellion has tapped into and facilitated a huge reservoir of latent energy across the UK. Lives that have long been dedicated to personal, cultural, spiritual, ecological, and economic regeneration are finding joint purpose, now strengthened by younger people who have come of age under the shadow of ecological extinction. The demands for a citizen-led response to climate breakdown are without precedent. We are at a time for endless dissection and critique. Spearheaded by Extinction Rebellion, we can begin to interweave many spheres of activism within a broader and more purposeful platform. With this awareness, which must start with acknowledging the truth of the danger we are in, an abundant future co-created with the earth just about still feels possible. Together with the transformative potential of renewables and regenerative agriculture, we can harness immense energy to support a cultural shift from ego to egocentric. None of this ignores colonial, corporate, and consumer culpability, nor the immediate challenges facing disenfranchised Indigenous and Global South communities. As a white and comparatively well-resourced UK citizen, I'm using the privilege of my relative safety to disrupt business as usual. The situation feels like it demands nothing less. That's Charlotte Dean, and she's a writer and she's a permaculture consultant living in the Southwest UK. Next, it's time to move from protest to politics. Throughout my entire life, many wonderful activists have worked to force governments to act on climate change. From climate camps to the anti-fracking fight, the energy of the environmental movement has been an inspiration to campaigners everywhere. Yet, from today's perspective, these efforts were in vain. This year alone has seen the green lighting of fracking and the confirmation that Heathrow will expand despite the fact that it is clearer than ever that man-made climate change is hurtling the planet towards disaster. The situation is urgent. Extinction Rebellion have correctly recognized this, but their strategy will not work. Blocking bridges, gaining headlines, and mass arrests, while useful, in terms of maintaining a spotlight on climate change, will not ultimately bring about the radical shift in economic policy that's necessary. In its place, and this is what I was talking about earlier, the climate movement must engage strategically with the labor movement, the only political force with power and capacity to deliver the transformation needed to avert catastrophic climate change. Green energy, infrastructure, and industry must sit at the, must sit at the heart of all labor's economic policy. And the argument that fighting climate change need not lead to a loss of jobs has to be won within the trade unions. This is the UK, remember. We can do this here in the United States. We can do it all over the world. And I just want to say hi to somebody. Hi, Lynn. Somebody very special to me. Hi, Joanne. Take my little break. In the US, this is already happening. The strategy of the Sunrise Movement in engaging with left Democrats has produced Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal, a development that Naomi Klein has called game-changing. Here in the UK, we need the same. The climate movement will find many allies willing to work with them to achieve this, and their energy will be much needed to help build a social majority behind the transformative economic policy necessary to prevent catastrophic global warming. It's time to move from protest to politics. Good evening, Gregory. It's so nice to see you all. You don't have any idea. You don't have any idea. You really don't. Here's the next one and the last one, I think. That was Isaac Rose, who is the chair of the Manchester branch of Momentum, a group within Labour formed to support Jeremy Corbyn's leadership and push for socialist policies and the democratization of the party. XR must call out capitalism and neo-colonialism. The climate change movement must engage strategically with the labor movement. The only political force with power and capacity to deliver the transformation needed to avert catastrophic climate change. Okay, over the last few months, we have been working as a part of and in solidarity with Extinction Rebellion. Cameron was voluntarily arrested on the 17th of November during Rebellion Day, while Bowden was acting as a legal observer. We believe Extinction Rebellion has certain serious issues that need addressing if it wants to effectively and responsibly fight for climate justice. Anti-capitalism, decolonization, and anti-oppressive work cannot be an afterthought, shoved into a 5-minute window between speeches or tucked away at the end of an action. Communities on the front line of climate change fight the causes and manifestations of climate breakdown daily, supporting and platforming their struggles by targeting the systems of exploitation and extraction that they resist must be at the center of Extinction Rebellion. A good place to start would be rethinking messaging and tactics. So far, the movement hasn't focused on neocolonialism and capitalism as engines of climate breakdown, and it has actively chosen to disassociate from leftist thought. The current message puts equal weight on the extinction of animal species as on the daily loss of human lives in the global south. In doing so, it alienates frontline communities already leading fights for racial, environmental, gender, class, and indigenous justice, neglecting the struggles of the real victims of climate breakdown in order to attract centrists and conservatives. The use of arrests to crowd out police stations and gain media coverage is innovative. However, the narrow focus on this form of protest inevitably elevates white middle-class British voices for whom arrest isn't as big of a deal. Same thing in the United States. And it excludes people of color, trans folk, anyone with a precarious visa status, and working class people for whom arrest is a potentially lethal and life-ruining prospect. And in the United States, you can lose your life. Extinction Rebellion is not fighting for climate justice if its movement excludes these people most disproportionately affected by climate breakdown. Instead of exclusively focusing on arrests, it should target banks, fossil fuel corporations, and extractive industries, creating more platforms for frontline community leadership and connecting with other justice-oriented campaigns, which is what I said in the beginning. This would be a lot more effective and popular than bluntly grind-locking London streets or anywhere for that matter, I'm saying in the world, but it's going to happen. It's just a part of this whole thing that has to happen. We need to remember that being part of an integrated ecology of movements is much more threatening to entrenched power than acting in isolation. This was true for the civil rights and anti-colonial movements that Extinction Rebellion gains insight from, and it is true now. That was Cameron Joshi, who is a member of the London Renters Union and London activist group Our Future Is Now. He co-writes a blog on activism with two other activists called Army of Three. And Bowden Franklin is a climate activist focusing on divestment, climate justice, and anti-fracking in the UK. I thought that was great commentary on what's going on. I did. I thought it was really good. And I'm going to segue, because with every good thing, of course, we have the shitty things. And in the United States, We have the Heritage Foundation already trashing everything that's been going on. This we have seen this week, what, in 1 week, 2 weeks, we've seen the 4th National Climate Assessment come out in the United States. We've also had the IPCC report come out on climate change. It's pretty conservative, I think. Bernie had his climate change meeting that was televised, well, on YouTube, of course. I think mainstream media is going to show that. And then there was the 24 Hours of Climate Reality, and that was hosted by Al Gore. And it was interesting because I kept turning it on and off because it was 24 hours. I mean, you can't, and they had musicians, but it's all to bring about consciousness. The thing is, can we fight some of this consciousness, the dead consciousness, like the Heritage Foundation, who are funded by the fossil fuel industry and the Kochs? They, just real quickly, they were founded in 1973, and they are a right-wing think tank, okay? And already on their website, there is an article that came out on December 5th, and it's by Edwin Fulner, PhD, who is the founder and former president of the Heritage Foundation. I'm certainly not going to read the whole thing, but this is what he says in the beginning, the key takeaways. The author of 1968's The Population Bomb was another gloom and doom prophet who made so many failed predictions over the years that it's hard to keep count. My comment? Bullshit. We are now at 7.5 billion people. We cannot keep going because it's not sustainable. Number 2, he says, climatologists lay out 4 possible future trajectories for the environment. Alarmist sees on the worst one. It's also the least likely. How does he know? And number 3, it's time for the global warming crowd to realize once and for all that civilization isn't ending. Not in 1985 and not in 2100. And those are the cold facts. And I'd like to know, where does he get his cold facts? He gets his cold facts provided by the shills from the fossil fuel industry, who are greedy, who bend the science. And I'm sorry, not all scientists are wonderful. I'd say 98% are, but the 2% that work for the Heritage Foundation and that get paid by the fossil fuel industry, they're sellouts. I'll probably have Martha Ball follow me now. That's Tim Ball, who is a notorious climate denier. Every time I put something up, his wife trolls me, but I don't delete her because let her troll me. She just makes herself look stupid because she keeps posting the same video over and over and over that her husband did. So this guy says, okay, I'm going to tell you, it's all about money with these people. And he says, if the doomsayers want to spread pessimism, that's their business, but the rest of us shouldn't have to pay for it, because all they think about is the costs that are going to be associated with making the changes. But these are costs that will lead us into a new era for however long it lasts, right? He says, now that the alarmists need an excuse like the National Climate Assessment to make bad recommendations. Oh, he says, not that the alarmists need an excuse. Even before it came out, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change had proposed a carbon tax, he says, of between 135 and 5,500 per ton of carbon emissions by the year 2030. And he says, an energy tax of that magnitude would bankrupt families and businesses. Bullshit. Okay. I call bullshit so much on this. It is propaganda and it is brainwashing. And I'm going to read something from the Citizens Climate Lobby, who is the organization that is behind the carbon fee. Okay. A carbon fee. America's Climate Solution, HR 7173, is one of the bill, and it's called the Carbon Dividend Act of 2018. This policy will drive down America's carbon pollution while unleashing American technology, innovation, and ingenuity. We support it because it's effective. The policy will reduce America's emissions by at least 40% within 12 years. It's good for people. The policy will improve health and save lives. Additionally, the carbon dividend puts money directly into people's pockets every month to spend as they see fit, helping low and middle income Americans. And it's good for the economy. This policy will create 2.1 million additional jobs over the next 10 years, thanks to growth in the clean energy economy. And it's also bipartisan, they say. They say solving climate change is too urgent to get caught up in partisan politics, and it's revenue neutral. The fees collected on carbon emissions will be allocated to all Americans to spend any way they choose. The government will not keep any of the fees collected. So this bill talks about a carbon fee, a carbon dividend, a border carbon adjustment, and regulatory adjustment. I'll put the link up because it's really interesting. And what it does is Citizens Climate Lobby, this is not the kind of thing you think, Joanne, about. It's different, the kind of thing, the carbon fee. It's not, has nothing to do with like federal taxes, the way you think about federal taxes. So I'll put the links up for you because they describe the carbon, the dividend, that we get the money. And the Heritage Foundation and all the right-wing think tanks are a bunch of liars, essentially. They are. They're a bunch of liars. And these people, their agenda is what did Donald Trump say? He won't be around. Their agenda, and I'm going to say something, the grand old party, the Republican Party, and I'm not going to talk about the Democrats at this moment in this, because the grand old party, the Republicans, don't give a shit about democracy. They don't care about democracy. That's evident in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Ohio, where they lost elections and they are scrambling in their legislatures to take the power away from the Democrats that won. Have you ever heard of that being done by a Democratic legislature? And I'm not defending any party. I'm just making a comment on what I see, because I could go on and on into this and what's going on with the disgusting, despicable things that are happening. We see them every day. We see them every day. So I've pretty much gone through most of what I wanted to. There was an article in HuffPost about Bernie Sanders and his it says, it was in HuffPost, it said 2 years can be a split second in geological time and an eternity in politics. But it may also be just long enough for an issue ignored in one election to reach center stage in the next, which is climate change, and then the resulting environmental degradation all over. Yes, Dolores, right on. The carbon, but it's not a tax, it's called a fee. We have to change the narrative. It's not a tax, it's a fee, because it'll result in a dividend going back to the people. So I really urge you to go to the Citizens Climate Lobby page and at least read about what they're saying. So Monday, at the same time that the COP was going on, the Vermont senator packed 2 rooms of the Hart Senate office building for a star-studded town hall meeting on climate change. Good. Good. There can't be enough. There really can't be enough. Can't be enough activism. There just can't be. And my little way is here. I'm not physically able to get out there and do civil disobedience. If I was, I would be. And I would probably want to start I would love to be with Extinction Rebellion. I would love to be doing things more actively with The climate mobilization. This is what I can do. This is where my voice is. I'm going to end with something that I liked. And it was something that Senator Sheldon Whitehouse in the United States, who does a series for the other senators, what is it called? We don't have time. Well, it's like they had this Senate thing going on called the Senate Web of Denial Resolution, calling out the destructive forces of the fossil fuel industry funded climate denial. Sheldon Whitehouse is huge on this, and I'll get your the link up to something out there. And you know what, Gregory? Wait a minute. He said I'd be raising hell. I did at one point in my life. I just can't do it now. But the younger people are doing it. And that's why Greta Thunberg is so important, because she's 15. I'm going to be dead. But I'm not going to say it in the way that Donald Trump does, that who cares about what happens? I care about what happens in leaving a legacy. I care about these young people. I care about what we did to them. So I'm going to end with this. And it was just a statement that Senator Whitehouse said, and he had called out a lot of groups. And I really liked it. And he says, the scholarship of all these academics, all these organizations, all these authors, the detectives who are exposing the web of denial, have shined a bright light into its dark corners and illuminated its concerted effort to dupe the American public and sabotage climate action in America, all to protect the fossil fuel industry that funds it. It's sickening, but it's big. The denial web is designed to be big and sophisticated enough that when you see its many parts, you're fooled into thinking it's not the same beast. But it is. Like the mythological Hydra, many heads, same beast. Welcome to the web of denial. And thank you to those who are working to expose it. It's a filthy thing in our democracy. So, there you have it. Greta Thunberg. I'll put all the links up. You will love her. She's from Sweden. You will love her. Absolutely love this young girl. I do. So anybody want to chit chat with any questions? Because I can only sit for so long and do this. 6 months post this stuff, I'm not good, but we're not going to go into that. Nope, not gonna whine. I really, really wanted to talk about this stuff. It's just so important. And I also like to drop what's going on. And don't forget to go to the YouTube channel Going South. Don't forget to subscribe to Torstein's channel. So many things. Scientists warning. Stuart Scott is on my mind a lot right now because he is an activist who is over there he's in Poland, and he did interview Greta and her family. And it's on the Environmental Coffee House page, I think. And I have to do one more thing, guys. I'll put up Gregory's 15-year-old Swedish girl, an environmentalist. Yes. I have to shout out to Jonathan O. Jonathan O is one of the editors on that page. And Jonathan O is doing a phenomenal job on Environmental Coffee House. And it is like, wow, what a bunch of great people. So I needed to give a shout out. Anything else going on, guys? I want to thank you for coming. Think about all of this. I promise I'll put the links up. Takes me a little while sometimes, but I will. And here we go. I gave you a lot of information. And we know what we have to do. And we cannot stop. We can't let the ugly web of deception win. So let's get going. We'll have our own Extinction Rebellion mixed up with everybody else, because we have to learn from the sneaky ass tactics of the right and the Tea Party and all of those things that they've done, and we've got to do it. It's just what it is. Steve says thank you. You're welcome. Share. Again, I'm in jail, and I really appreciate all of you.